This is a video of me reading chapter 5. The alarm went off at 7, and Kathy Griffin reached out without opening her eyes and pressed the button to shut it off. Just as automatically, she reached for Brian in the bed beside her, to find nothing but an empty pillow and a mass of tangled sheets. She groped for a moment as though expecting to find him there, twisted somehow into the sheets or buried beneath the untidy lumps of blanket. Then, as she became more fully conscious, she sighed and opened her eyes to affirm the fact that she was, indeed, alone in the double bed. That man, she thought, I don't know why he owns an alarm clock. He never bothers to use it. The sound of running water told her the shower in the bathroom was in use. She lay quiet, letting herself come slowly awake until the water stopped and she heard the shower stall open and slam closed. A few moments later, the bathroom door opened and Brian came into the bedroom, dressed in a t-shirt and boxers, toweling his hair. Morning, Bri, Kathy greeted him, hauling herself to a sitting position. What's the order of the day, fried or scrambled? Go back to sleep, Brian told her. I'll fix my own eggs this morning. No, I want to. A moment before, she would have given anything to have been able to roll over and sink back into slumber. Now that she had been given a reason to, some contrariness in her personality kept her from doing it. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood up slowly, adjusting herself to the unaccustomed weight of her rounded belly. There's nothing in the rules that says that pregnant women can't cook breakfast. You're sure you feel like it? Of course. And now suddenly she did. She gave him a quick kiss on the cheek in passing, pulled a terry cloth robe over her nightgown, and padded barefoot out to the kitchen to put on the coffee. To Kathy, going barefoot meant springtime. Raised on a farm in Michigan, she had gone barefoot in childhood from the time the first dandelions appeared in the new grass to the time of the first snowfall. Her feet were so rough that she thought sometimes she could walk across a bed of nails without any discomfort. To Brian, whose feet were soft and tender as a baby's, the whole idea was upsetting. You'll step on something, he told her. That's the way people get tetanus. It was one of their minor differences. There were many others. In fact, if a programmer had planned the most unsuitable partnership imaginable, Brian and Kathy Griffin could have been the outcome. Brian had his master's degree in English from Stanford University. Kathy had been a C student in high school and had never gone to college. He had, until recently, been assistant professor in English at the University of Albuquerque. She had, until 2 months ago, sold contemporary sportswear at a department store. Their personalities were as different as their backgrounds. He's a fine man, I'm sure, Kathy's mother had said the first time she met him. He's certainly brilliant and dedicated to his work, but he's so stiff and serious and, well, truthfully, dear, any man who is still a bachelor at 36 has to have something the matter with him. Perhaps he never met the right woman, Kathy suggested mildly, or maybe it just takes him so long to loosen up and break through the ice that all women he's known have given up and walked off before they ever actually got to know him. And you've decided to be different? Why? Because I'm stubborn, Kathy had admitted truthfully, and because I think that Brian Griffin is worth waiting for. And wait, she did. They had known each other for 2 years before Brian asked her to marry him, and another year before the marriage took place. At the time he proposed, he had told her of his decision to leave the university and take enough education courses to become certified at the high school level. It will be a year before I'll be able to take on the responsibility of marriage, he had told her. And even then, it won't be milk and honey. I'll be making less money than I have been, and there will be a lot less security. I have tenure at the college, which I won't have in high school, and I might not even be able to get a job immediately. The country's overstocked with high school teachers. But then why do you want to be one? Kathy had asked him, puzzled. Because there aren't enough good ones, Brian had told her. Many of the kids coming into my classes at the university are all but illiterate. You give them a page to read and they can't tell you what's on it. Try teaching them the classics and they can't pronounce the words. Ask them to write about something and they can't make complete sentences, much less spell anything over 2 syllables. Can't you do anything about it? I try, but it's too late, Brian had said. By the time they're in college, it's gone too far, and they've had 12 years without disciplined learning, and they don't know how to apply themselves. They haven't learned to study or to pace their work so that projects get completed on time. They fall asleep in lectures because they expect to be entertained and not educated. We lost a third of our freshman class last year. They dropped out at the end of the semester. And what would you do as a high school teacher that isn't being done now? I'd teach, damn it. I wouldn't baby them or play games with them. I'd push each one into doing the best work of which he or she was capable. By the time they finished a class with me, my college prep students would be able to handle university work. And the others, Kathy had known in her heart that during her school years, the others would have included her. The others would graduate with the knowledge of what disciplined work is all about. That should stand them in good stead no matter what they decide to do. You wouldn't be very popular, I'm afraid. I've never been very popular anywhere. I have an abrasive personality. Fierce dogs cower when I walk down the street and slink away to hide under porches. Small children run screaming to their mothers. Beautiful girls rip their numbers out of the phone book and chew them up and swallow them, for fear I might call them. Oh, Brian, she burst out laughing. He was so seldom humorous that his awkward attempts at joking touched her deeply. And so he had continued, are you willing to wait a year to be the wife of a high school English teacher? It isn't a very exciting prospect, I must admit. Not nearly as respectable as being the wife of a college professor. I wouldn't blame you. I really wouldn't. His sentence had trailed off, unfinished. His eyes had dropped from hers, and she had looked down to see that his hands were clenched in his lap, the knuckles white, the nails making little grooves in his palms. And she had known then how much her answer meant to him. Yes, she had said, I'll wait a year, Bri. You're sure it's what you want? I'm sure. And now 3 years later, she was still sure. Kathy had never needed a great deal to make her happy, and what she had now was more than sufficient. Humming tunelessly beneath her breath, she made the coffee, mixed the frozen orange juice in a pitcher, and put bread in the toaster. Broke 2 eggs into a pan. It was springtime. Under the kitchen window, the first hyacinths were blooming.
Bus 10 is here and ready to leave. Anyone else in the building? Bus number 10 is here and ready to leave.
Last week's dust.
Please make your way out ASAP. Run, run, run.
Last week's dust storm was behind them, and the air was fresh.
The bus is outside. It's ready to take off.
And clear and sweet. The nausea that had accompanied her first months of pregnancy was all over also. She would eat a good breakfast. Later in the morning, she would go out into the yard and sit in a lawn chair in the sunshine. She glanced up and smiled as Brian came in, his hair slicked down, his hands deftly adjusting the knot in his tie. Do all teachers at Del Norte wear the ties to class? No, the Riffrair wear open-neck sports shirts. Wouldn't that be more comfortable? I like a tie. It gives me dignity. He was only half joking. I got used to wearing one at the university. Why change now? He took a seat at the kitchen table and reached for his glass of orange juice. Call the pharmacy and order a refill on my pills today, will you? I'll pick them up on my way home. That'll be a bit later than usual. Oh, a faculty meeting? No, a student wants a conference. I'm meeting her at 3. It may take a while. She wants to go over some papers. Is she one of your problems? Kathy asked, sliding into the eggs onto the plate and carrying them over to him. No, actually, she's one of my good ones, named Susan McConnell. She's quite a talented writer, very imaginative. I had them all write final songs for her Ophelia, and hers was exceptionally good. Have you told her that? Of course not. I don't want her resting on her laurels thinking she's a genius. She still has things to learn. She tends to get quite overdramatic, and she's sloppy about details and spelling and punctuation and such. She's not a perfectionist. She's still young, Bri. Kathy seated herself across from him. She took a slice of toast and began to spread it with jam. Most kids are sloppy. I'm afraid you're right about that. Your own may be. Have you ever thought about that? Brian Jr.? Surely you jest. His eyes moved fondly over the bulge in front of her robe. How is he this morning? Fine and active. She took a bite of toast. Seriously, Bri, I worry sometimes about that. About your wanting him to be perfect and his not measuring up. He might be born with cross eyes or a birthmark or a hair lip or something. Would you still love him? Of course. He was answering her seriously. He wouldn't be able to help those things. We'd ride with it, take care of him, and get him fixed up if we could. He'd still be ours. If you really feel that way, Kathy said thoughtfully, why can't you be more tolerant of your students when they're not perfect? Because they can help it, especially with today's technology. Anybody can Google a word if he doesn't know its meaning, or use spell check if he doesn't know how to spell it. Time can be planned so that the assignments come in on time. There's no excuse for carelessness. The Ruggles boy, for example, came in last week with a real sob story about how he completed his paper and the wind tore it out of his hand and blew it away. Papers put carefully into a notebook don't blow off. On a windy day, you close a notebook and put it under your arm. That's elementary enough. Did he redo the assignment? He did, but I wouldn't accept it. It would set a precedent. If I took one late paper, I'd never be able to refuse the next one. Within a week, everything I've taught them about work discipline would be down the drain. The class would be as much of a mess as the one taught by that idiot Luna woman. Dolly Luna? She smiled despite herself. I've got to meet her. After all, the kids dedicated last year's yearbook to her. Is she really a dolly? Sure is. 2 big eyes that open and shut, painted on smile, head full of sawdust. See a 30-year-old teenager? That's our dolly. She doesn't want the kids to think she knows more than they do for fear that they won't like her. Kathy didn't know why, but the metaphor struck her strangely. The grin faded from her lips. She herself smiled a lot. She had never thought about that. Brian, she said slowly, do you think of me as a dolly? Of course not. He was honestly shocked. What am I when you think of me? You? Why, you're my wife. Before that, what was I? You were Kathy. You were a real person, and all you've ever been to me is Kathy. He took a final swallow of coffee, stood up, and took the paper napkin and ran it across his teeth. It was a gesture she hated. If people were that concerned about their teeth, they should brush them one extra time in the morning. At the same time, it made him suddenly so human, so vulnerable, that she wanted to hug him. It was terrible to be so in love with a man whose weaknesses were his virtues. Bri, she said, I want to ask you a favor about that McConnell girl. What? He looked surprised. If she really is as talented as you say, I want you to tell her. There's something to handing out something positive. So she overwrites. So she's messy. She's imaginative and bright and special. You said so yourself. I want you to tell her that. Kathy, you don't even know the kid. Yes, I do. She stood her ground. Not personally, baby, but I know her. What you just said to me, you are real, you're a person, you're Kathy, that matters, Brian. Tell her that. You are real. You are Susan. You are a writer. You don't have any idea how much it really matters to be real. I can't say a thing like that. Then write it. Put it on her paper. Not the test paper. She didn't do well on that quiz. In fact, it's the worst paper so far. It's her worst paper so far. I think she's got a boyfriend. Then on another paper, on the song for Ophelia. You're a bossy wench. He made a grab for her. Kiss me, Kate. Not if you talk in Shakespeare. She pulled back, both pleased and offended. You're not taking me seriously. I meant it. Every word about Susan McConnell. You're taking it too far, Bri. You've got to give them something besides criticism. I won't tell you how to cook eggs. You don't tell me how to teach a class, okay? He was leaving now, and he was suddenly angry. Her eyes filled with tears. It was ridiculous how often this happened lately. It must have something to do with being pregnant, she thought. Every time she got mad or sad or even happy, she cried. Okay, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Have a good day. I'll phone the pharmacy for you as soon as it opens. I love you. I'll see you tonight. Okay, later. He was out the door, and for one sharp moment, she almost ran screaming after him. Come back! That suddenly, that quickly, it struck her. I don't want him to go. He can't go. Without reason, terror shot through her. But she was as frozen as stone, and her lips open to shrill the words that would make him stay. Something is wrong, she thought wildly. Something terrible. Don't go. And as though her thoughts had been strong enough to reach out and touch him, he was back again. He was bending over her, his hand under her chin, raising her face to his. Kathy, he said, I love you. I know, she whispered. I know. It was strange, like a formal goodbye. But how could it be when he would be back so soon, in only a matter of hours? After school, after the conference with the McConnell girl, he would be home. It will be different, she thought, when the baby comes. It would all be different. Once he's a father, he will be able to give love more easily. He'll be able to reach out to all of them then and touch them. It will be different in only months now when the baby comes. And that's it.